Hello, and welcome to a video from Music at St. Luke, based at St. Luke Lutheran Church in Ithaca. I'm music director Eric Kibblesbeck, and as live events are so tricky to have right now, I thought we'd do something we couldn't easily do at a live event anyways. Have a tour of the inner workings of the Juget Sinclair French Romantic pipe organ. I'll do my best to walk the line between using too much organist jargon and oversimplifying. Apologies in advance if I use some words you don't know, or on the other hand, if I skim over something you're interested in. There's a link in the description to the dedication brochure for the organ, which provides more technical information. You're also welcome to ask questions in the comments, and I'll answer as I'm able. The genesis of this organ was a desire to give this community a splendid instrument, both worthy of its church function and in a style of organ building not commonly found in this area. We wanted it to give the player the most authentic sound and feel of playing an instrument from a particular time and place, and we chose the French Romantic era. Much research by our builders, and an exploratory trip to France later, we have this instrument which in feel and sound could have been built by Aristide Cavaillé-Coll, the acknowledged master of that style of organ building. We did compromise in one way. Instead of a Stairmaster-like device for raising the wind, we do have an electric blower. But everything else is mechanical, as it would have been. There are no electronic or computerized assists for changing stops quickly, as would be built today.
Our model for the sound, and to some extent stop choices, took as inspiration the Cavaillé-Coll organ at Long-sur-Saône, pictured here. The selection of which stops to include was a long and involved process. Space limited us, but the imposition of limits is also very edifying at helping you prioritize what the core necessities are. The console fairly closely copies one in Charenton-le-Pont, which you can see here. It's also worth noting that our acoustic, while slightly improved as part of the organ project, is somewhat drier than most every old church in France. Let's start with a visual note. You're now looking at a design in the stonework from what was the outside of the church prior to about 2000, when an addition was put up. It's now inside the narthex. Now here's a close-up of the woodworking on the front of the organ case, just behind the choir's backs. As you can see, Juget Sinclair took the visual motive from the 1920s and incorporated it into the neo-Gothic case of this instrument. Appropriately for an instrument on Oak Avenue, there's a great deal of oak in this organ, including this front. Unlike the pipes remaining at the front of the church from the 1920s Skinner, these, in the facade, are functional. The carvings would not have been out of place in a Cavaillé-Coll original. The pipes controlled by the top keyboard are in a box with shutters at the center and top of the organ. The lower keyboard's pipes are divided between the left and right side, and the larger pedal pipes are at floor level behind screens, which are partially wood and partially cloth, which we will see later. Let's move to the console now. We never really close the cover, but I thought I'd start with it closed to show you how cleverly this opens up and how the music rack unfolds. While I'm doing that on screen, Recorded Me will tell you that the keys are made out of ebony for the black keys and cowbone for the white keys. The pedals are made out of wood. Each keyboard and the pedals play different sets of pipes and can also be coupled together. The stops on the top row adjust the sound for the upper keyboard, the next row for the lower keyboard, and the three on the bottom row are for the pedals. Now let's do a quick stop tour. This will be very quick. We can probably do a much more thorough version of this in a completely separate video. Let's start with the pedal, the sous-basse at 16 feet. And then the 8-foot flute, which is of open wood construction. The grand-orgue stops. Let's start with the 8-foot bourdon of a little flute stop, which has chimneys in its upper register construction. There's a stringy salitional stop. There's this lovely flute harmonique. It's big and beautiful, especially as you go higher. And then the foundation stop called montre. There's a bit of bass. There's a 16-foot bourdon. Then up on the recit or upper keyboard, we have a viola da gamba stop. The stop next to it sounds similar, but is tuned slightly sharp, so when you put them together, a shimmery effect. Then we have a reed stop. It's labeled basson et hautbois, bassoon and oboe. It's a bassoon down here in the low register. And then up from middle C upwards, it's more built like an oboe sort of sound. The voix humaine stop is tiny little pipes meant to imitate the human voice. It is often used with the box shut on it and with the tremulant. All right, and now on the right side of the console, we have the louder and brighter stops. Down in the pedal, we have the bassoon. On the upper keyboard, we have a 4-foot prestante, 12th, the quint stop, and a 2-foot. Put those together, put that foundation stop underneath them, you get furniture or mixture stop. I'm just going to play that from bottom to top. It's a little bit unusual. Organ builders will notice. That really was playing from the bottom of the keyboard up to the top. You put that all together. In fact, you put all the stops on the lower keyboard on together, you get up on the top keyboard, we have another flute, 8 feet. A 4-foot, which is actually harmonic by itself, with the 8-foot. And there's a 2-foot, also harmonic. And then we have the big reeds, the trumpet. Foot, even brighter. Merged together. Now I've removed the front panel above the pedal board so you can see some of the action. First, I'll just push down a pedal or two and you can see that it pulls down a thin rod, which is attached to a metal lever, which transfers the motion to those wooden dowels up there, which get the action to where we need it for some other functions. We'll see the other side of that in a moment. Every key, pedal, or stop creates motion between the console and where it needs to go inside the organ case, and there are usually many levers, rods, and so on to make this happen. The next thing to show you here are all these metal pedals, or toe spoons as the French call them. The springs you can see help pull them back up. To operate them, you simply push down on them and then you could hook them down by moving them over to the left. To release, you move to the right and the spring pulls it back up. Let's go from left to right. First, there's an effect that Cavaillé included in a lot of his organs to give a thunder effect. They liked that sort of thing in those days. Really, it just pushes down the first few pedals, as you can kind of see, and also hear. Not something I use in church every week, that is for sure. The next thing you can see as well as hear. First I'll just show it to you so that you can see it. If I put down the TGO, which is grand-orgue, or great to pedal coupler, if I push down a pedal, the key goes down as well without me having to use my hands to do that. So if I put a low sound in the pedal, and a higher one in the manual coupler on, you get them both together. Same thing, the next one next to it does the upper keyboard. So that sound on there, and the coupler's on. I get all 3 sounds, pedal, lower, and upper keyboards all together. Further along here, we have the coupler, which puts the two keyboards together, which again you can see. And put a stringy sound here, and a fluty sound here. Coupler's on, I get them both together. The one next to it is called octave grave, and it gives us the upper keyboard, but down an octave from where you play it. So as you just visually, no sound, you can see that if I play that octave, an octave lower plays on here. This especially makes sense with big sounds in the upper end of the keyboard to keep the gravitas in there so that it doesn't get squeaky. This pedal here in the middle controls the shutters on the front of the box in which the pipes of the upper keyboard are enclosed. Control it with your foot and create some shading to the sound. The louder stops sound like this. You really can make that disappear behind the stops of the other keyboard if you would like to. Next is the feature of the French Romantic organ. It was a new invention at the time, and it gives you the ability to bring on stops quickly without using your hands. As you can see, these stops are all on. If I play the keys, absolutely nothing happens until I put down the one that corresponds to that manual. So for the top manual, hook that one down, and then the bright and loud stop sound. Same thing for the lower keyboard. And also for basson there. This we could spend a whole video on just on how that actually gets used. But I will just mention one thing. Cavaillé would usually have done that with double pallet boxes, different wind chests. We used double sliders here, inspired by a Merklin organ we saw in Paris, which accomplishes the same thing with much less space. The last spoon on the end turns on the tremulant. And off again, obviously. This seems a good moment to do a demonstration of everything together. This will be the last note of the Saint-Saëns organ symphony, among many other things. Hold on to your hats. Here's a look at the inside of the console from the top, with the top moved off to the side. I think it's fairly obvious what the keys do. The round shafts attached to the stop knobs, as you can see, are longer than they would seem from the front. They operate a lever at the back, which sends the motion down to the floor level. Now we're around the back of the organ console. Again, the cover is removed. These metal pieces at the bottom transfer the motion of those toe spoons. All the rest of this is the action that translates the motion of the keys and pedals to the trackers under the floor and then onto the chests and pipes. This is where the coupling happens as well. These top two rows are the manual action, one for each keyboard. Below it you can see the sub-octave coupler mechanism transferring the motion down one octave. Beneath that are the mechanisms for getting the pedal keys to activate the manual keys when the pedal couplers are engaged. And all these thin rods at the front are going down to under the floor trough where all the trackers run. Here's a picture taken during assembly of the organ here in the church, which shows the tracker runs that are now under the floor. The floor has removable panels should we ever need to make repairs. The thinner strips run from the keys, and the thicker ones are for the stops. Here you see closest to us the trackers for the grand-orgue or lower keyboard. Behind it are the trackers for the upper keyboard, which we'll see from the other side in a moment. These in front come from left to right are the lowest to highest. But remember that the pipes are divided left and right, every other one. So the first one meets this metal thing here and then sends the signal to the left. The next one sends the signal to the right, and so forth. That brings the motion over here under the actual chest, which the pipes sit on. If I remove this cover, you can see the end of the palette that opens to let the wind into the pipe above for each note. When the blower is on, the area inside is under wind pressure, hence the leather seals. Here is a view of the palette set into motion by the keys. The palette allows wind into each pipe for the note being played. If the slider for the stop allows wind into the pipe, that is, if the stop is on, the pipe sounds. Here's the tremulant in action. It makes the wind wavy on the reservoir for the upper keyboard only. I don't have any idea how it works, but it does. Now let's look at some pipes. The pedal division has 3 sets of pipes, which are divided between the left and the right side on the floor. As we approach the area on the left, I can open the access door, and perhaps you can now see that the panels have cloth in them to let the sound out. The lowest wooden pipe mouths at the back there are the 16-foot subas, a very common stop in almost every organ. In front of that, and much easier to see, are the mouths of the 8-foot open flute. Then in front, all the metal pipes are a 16-foot bassoon stop. Because we don't have room for the full length, you can see where these are curved around, as they're the longest in the organ, a full 16 feet. So, now let's go inside. First of all, as you enter, is this wonderful plate listing all the members of the Juget Sinclair shop who worked on this organ with their signatures. I absolutely love this personal touch. They are all amazing craftspeople with the very highest standards for making everything perfect. We also have here a couple empty champagne bottles. We use those to toast the completion of the installation and voicing stage. Unknown to the gentleman who provided it, it is by Clicquot, which is also the name of a French Baroque organ builder. Visible here is one of the wooden wind lines, which gets wind down to the pedal chest. This first big thing here is the blower, encased in the green muffler. This pulls in air and sends it to the reservoirs above. Here is the mechanism that takes the pedal trackers from the console and divides them, sending the motion to the 2 sides of the case, so they operate the chests that hold the pipes. Turning around, here's the back of the trackers that go to the recit, or upper keyboard. Over here, you can see the elaborate wooden conveyances that move when a stop is pulled out or pushed in. Of course, this is just the one side because the lower keyboard pipes are divided also, left and right. It's incredible engineering. And here we have the first bit of ladder that takes us up. As we go, we'll pass the 2 reservoirs which hold the wind and adjust the pressure so that it's constant whether 1 or 100 pipes have the wind going through it. Not really easy to see because there's not enough light here. And then through the hatch and into the box we go. Pardon everything as I climb up and get sorted out here. So the first thing I'll point out is the inside of the shutters, which are controlled by that foot pedal, giving volume shading to the pipes in the box. The mechanism is perfectly balanced, so you can close them by hand and open them up again. You can see the backs of the facade pipes beyond that, perhaps just a tiny bit of the interior of the church. Let's look up to the roof of this box first, and you'll see the lowest 12 pipes of the 8-foot flute, which are made out of wood, with stoppers in the end, so they sound like an 8-foot pipe. They have those clear plastic wind tubes running from the chest to give them their wind. Neither the plastic nor the sealing location is an authentic Kvyat technique, at least as far as I know, but he might have used other conveyances for pipes that needed to be somewhere other than on the main chest. The tightly packed pipes in here is also not typical for Kvyat, but we were working with less space than he usually was. The lowest 2 octaves of each stop are against the back wall and go for 2 octaves. Then we arrive at this section where, to save space, the next pipe is in the middle and they go down in size on either side. The furthest rank away is the 8-foot viola da gamba, starting again with the lowest pipe in the back. That one pipe is set up higher. That's not original, but it was being drawn off speech by its neighbors, so the solution was taken just to move it up a bit, and now everything's fine. Next is the 8-foot corde nuit, the 8-foot flute stop, which is a metal rank with caps on the pipes. Again, this makes them sound an octave lower than they physically are. Then there's the 4-foot flute octaviant, which actually goes harmonic part way up, meaning the pipe is twice as long as it needs to be and overblows, creating that rich ethereal sound. Next is the Celeste, from tenor C only, creates that lovely wavy sound by being out of tune with the viola da gamba. The 2-foot octavant stop next to it, like its 4-foot counterpart, is largely harmonic. Then we come to the reeds. First is the 8-foot trumpet. You can see the full length 8-foot pipe at the back. Then the 4-foot clairon with its top octave dropping back to 8-foot pitch. Next is the bassoon and oboe stop, which actually, as I've said, is two different kinds of pipe. The first two octaves are like a French bassoon, and then here from middle C upwards, they are more oboe-like. Finally, these little tiny pipes are the voix humaine, or human voice pipes. I'll just also note, it's fairly incredible how loud the sound is in here. Whenever I've touched up the tuning on the reeds, I use earplugs to avoid passing the threshold of pain, even with just one pipe sounding at a time. By the time the sound gets out and into the church, though, it's at a far more bearable volume. Let me just slip back out of here and be back with you in a moment. Looking back at that last bit of video, it was a little bit hard to see some of it, so here's some stills. The video did show you sort of the layout of where things are in relation to one another, but this will give you some better close-ups. This, of course, is the blower with its green muffler, and in the plastic bags are there some spare parts should we need them. This shows you a close-up of the action that sends the pedal key action to the left and to the right. Here's a better lit version of the grand-orgue stop action, coming up from the floor below and sending the motion up to the chest above. Here are the wooden trackers going from vertically from the floor up to the chests. And here's a bit closer shot that shows you just how small they really are. And then we go up and we can see the reservoirs. It was really dark previously, and the wind was off in those. Here it's on, so the tops are up and you can see the leather. There are actually two reservoirs, as I said. On the left, you can see a corner of the one, and then the weight is sitting on the other one, which is for the recit, the top keyboard. So between the weight and the springs, it sets the pressure. Then just above that, you can see some of the stop action for the recit, which we didn't see at all previously. And then just above that, in this shot, you can see the ends of those and how they go into the palette box, and it's the same as what we saw in action just a moment ago, just for the top keyboard. So hopefully that was a little bit more helpful view of some of the things we passed by in the dark. Okay, now let's look at the pipes of the grand-orgue. Just give you perspective of where we are here. We're looking at the console, and now we're climbing up a ladder, having a look at this door on the side, which actually I've got slightly ajar because I've stuck a light in there, and opening the door and looking in at the back of the facade pipes. There's the light, and then up and over the tops of those pipes. And then I'll just give you an overview here because it's so awkward to kind of stand at this top of this ladder and peer around in general at this half of the grand-orgue pipes. And after that glance around, we're going to switch into looking at some still photos here. This one gives a shot of the 16-foot board on at the back, sort of to the left, and then this one has the low end of the 8-foot board, which is actually shared with the bottom of the flute harmonique as well, on their offset chest against the swell box. That's the side of the swell box behind there. Then looking towards the back of the pipes of the flute harmonique, which are again double length. And then closer in we have the treble ends of both the 16 and 8-foot bourdons. You can see on the right there that there's caps on those. And then on the left, there are those chimneys that I was mentioning about, where the top of both the 8 and 16-foot bourdons have chimneys. In this shot, a little closer down, you can see the pipes that are on the wood that you can see of their toe boards there, or the rack boards actually. Those are the ones that are on the double slider, which is why they're slightly higher. So at the back is the mixture, and then the 2 and the 2 2/3 are the ones closer in. The pipes in the foreground there are then the 4-foot prestant and the pipes from the 8-foot mantra that are not in the facade. In this shot you get sort of a side shot of those, and then a rank you couldn't see in the last picture, which is the 8-foot solitional. And then there's a walkboard for tuning, but I don't go there. Well, hopefully this has been interesting and informative. There will likely be more videos appearing on the Ithaca French Organ YouTube channel and eventually live events again. Thank you for watching, and keep up with our news either on Facebook at Music at St. Luke or on the web at www.musicatstluke.org.